Hi there. I'm Claudia Hofsky from Fed Insider, and on behalf of the George Washington University College of Professional Studies, TD SYNNEX Public Sector, and Irwin by Quest, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's webinar, Data Modeling for State and Local Governments. Please type your questions and comments into the Q&A pod. If we don't get to them during today's webinar, we'll share them with our speakers so they can follow up with you. Also, take note of the Resources tab on the left side of your screen to download today's slides and other reading materials on the topic. We offer live captioning for all of our webinars. To follow along with us today, use the hyperlink under the Live Captioning or CART tab located above the slides. We'll have the full transcript available in the next couple of days. And to earn training credit for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all polling questions and stay online for the duration of today's conversation. And now, let me turn over the reins to today's moderator, Jane Norris from Fed Insider. Take it away, Jane.
Thanks, Claudia. It's great to see you and everyone today. Thanks so much for joining us for this great conversation about data modeling. So if a picture is worth 1,000 words, turning data into graphical images that show relationships may be just as valuable. Agencies across the country are looking for ways to better leverage the value of the data they already gather, and they're considering data modeling to make better use of their information. There are 4 key areas where data modeling tools are being used: data governance and compliance, which simplifies the integration of data from various sources and stabilizes definitions and formats. Data migration and digital transformation are improved, offering graphic illustrations, data mapping, and integration, which provides a comprehensive view of data architectures and identifies dependencies. Data modeling tools also provide clarity by visually illustrating data structures and relationships, which improves understanding and communication among stakeholders. And finally, data modeling tools enable efficient design, development, and validation, which can optimize database performance, reducing development time and cost, while ensuring scalability and database architectures that are easier to maintain. So today, our incredible thought leaders from government and industry discuss their use of data modeling tools, what they learned as they incorporate the tools into their workflows, and how the tools have proved their value by improving efficiency and return on investment. So let me, without further ado, introduce our esteemed speakers. First, meet Natalie Evans Harris. Natalie is the Chief Data Officer for the state of Maryland. Hello, Natalie.
Hi, Jane. Hi, everyone. Looking forward to the conversation.
It's a pleasure to have you today, and thanks for being here. Artie Tangri is the Equity Data Lead for the city of San Jose, California. Artie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Marcus Thornton is Deputy Chief Data Officer for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and he's in today for Ken File, his Chief Data Officer, who's not able to join us today. Marcus, I want to thank you so much for stepping in and being part of the conversation.
Thank you, Jane. Great to be with you all.
It's a pleasure to have you. And Andrew McGovern is Senior Principal Consultant for Quest Public Sector. Andrew, hi, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jane. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you as well. So let's get started with our conversation with Natalie, if you will. Natalie, why do you think the process of using data modeling is important for Maryland government?
For us, we're using data modeling as a communication tool. So at the end of the day, the data is valuable when you can put it into action, and you can put it into action when people can understand it. So whether we're talking about internally across the state or externally with our open data users and other partners, data modeling has allowed us to create a shared language. We've been able to create a shared language that allows us to effectively communicate what data we have available, where is it available, how is it being used, what are the relationships across the different data look like, especially when we're thinking about telling stories, or especially when we're thinking about looking at innovations like AI and natural language processing. Having a strong data model as your foundation opens up the door for turning your data into an actionable resource. And that's how we're looking at it across our environment in Maryland.
Has that always been the case? What was your pathway? How long have you been using data modeling?
It's an interesting question. So before I came on, I've been in the role for about 8 months now. And before I came on, I'd say we were using data modeling in particular for our GIS environment. So we have an IMAP platform that is used extensively to be able to attach geolocation with other data sets. And it's a pretty robust platform. And the reason we've been able to do that and support the connecting of that data with other data sets and been able to bring multiple data sets together into the platform has been because we've been able to leverage data modeling. Since I've come on board, I've seen the effect of using it for data modeling and then brought that over into our conversations around how do we want to stand up our data literacy program across the state. Maryland as a federated state means that every agency within our state is pretty empowered to do what they want, how they want with their infrastructure. So where we sit, where we're more enterprise level, we've been able to use data modeling to create that shared language so that as we're bringing in data from our housing, as we're bringing in data from our labor, we're able to easily understand where the data is, what the structures are, helping create tools for discoverability and our master data management overall. So I would say that we've been using data modeling in our GIS environment to some extent in our open data environment, and now we're looking at how we can adopt it enterprise-wide.
It's fascinating. Thanks very much, Natalie. Appreciate that. Artie, similar question to you, and you're planning in San Jose of creating an enterprise data analytics governance strategy to streamline the management of data assets and support business decision making. Please tell us how you're going about organizing that strategy.
Sure. Yeah, it's a very exciting time for us at the City of San Jose. We are actually working with Bloomberg through their City Data Alliance program in building our data strategy. So we're in the middle of that, looking at a couple of months before we finalize that strategy. But really, it's structured around three main objectives. The first one is really establishing a data as a service, which is intended to operationalize data to enable easy data access to support decision making. And then the second one is fostering communities of practice. So we're really focusing on standardizing best practices, evangelizing data success stories, and facilitating data sharing and collaboration through this objective. And the last one is really around measuring impact. So data really tells us how things are functioning, so evidence-based decision making is really what we would like to support through this objective. So we are trying to leverage data to measure the effectiveness of our services and programs, building the foundation for that evidence-based decision making to ensure equitable outcomes for residents. So those are like three broad categories how we are trying to structure our strategy. And then that also leads into our data governance policy, which then we are using as an implementation mode for us to really get these objectives of the strategies in place.
Okay, so if I can follow up on that, can you share the process internally for establishing the governance strategy? Who was involved in that? Was it, something that your team developed and then, were asked for comment on, or who was involved in the decision making on it?
So I think we identified these three main objectives in our IT work plan, which was 23, I believe. And then as we are working with Bloomberg on really making this like a really strong data strategy, we are working through the details on what goes under each of these. And we're really identifying the goals for each of these objectives. As an example, I can say like data as a service. So it covers, data infrastructure. It covers, that's probably one of the main focus for data as a service, to really have what Natalie was talking about, right? That place where you can really see what everything is out there, what all the data that you have working with. For us, really the challenge is that everyone's doing stuff in silos, working with data in silos, and be able to have that one central location where we can just see everything that's happening. It really is a very eye-opening moment. So I really want us to get to that state, and that's what data as a service is really targeted to do. And then really the second objective we have is fostering communities of practice, which is more around really bringing people together. Everyone's operating at different capacity, at different levels, learning and sharing from each other. So that's really the focus. So we're trying to build these different working groups to facilitate those conversations, really talk about the challenges or the success stories that people have had, so we can learn from each other and collaborate and help each other in that sense. And then the measuring impact also leads to the similar aspect, right? Once we have the other two set in place, like if we have a data as a service practice in place, and if we have a better community of practice sharing enabled, then we can really work together to measure the program effectiveness and really showcase the value of data in using data to really inform where the budget money goes, and really informing all of our services and where should we invest money to really have provide the best services for the residents.
Okay, well, it's great. We'll get to some of the other more detailed information about some of the single source for data and the communities of practice in just a little bit. But thank you, Artie. Marcus, let's go to you next. As the Commonwealth of Virginia CDO, what are the key steps that you have implemented for Virginia's data modeling, and how has it facilitated data migration and digital transformation within the great state of Virginia? I'll put the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you. Yes. So we're excited to be in this space. We are the Office of Data Governance and Analytics. So we were established a few years ago in 2021, charged by the code to basically help facilitate the data sharing apparatus in Virginia. So that involves for us, a strategic focus on data modeling, how we ingest data, how we curate it. And really, when we're working with these different agencies, one of the key things for us was establishing what was our common MOU. So we invite agencies to join our Commonwealth Data Trust. We have a standard MOU, which was really one of the key steps to, getting past the hurdle of data sharing. There are a lot of, prior to our data trust, there were a lot of, point-to-point agreements that were in place. So establishing a common agreement, just one single agreement that agencies have to sign to join our data trust, and that really helped to sort of trigger a lot of the challenges, some of the hesitancies agencies were experiencing as it relates to data sharing. For us also, we had to establish an infrastructure, an environment to be able to ingest this information. How we ingest the data, how we specifically, normalize the data, curate it, have it in a standard place, how we store it. That environment needed to get built up, and we needed to build it with resources, who were skilled in those areas. For us, a lot of our work is done in the Microsoft stack, but we understood that the people that we were working with, a lot of our agency partners, they might be in a AWS stack. So, we had to be agnostic in how we approached agencies, sort of meeting them at the point of their need, not just from a solutions perspective, but from an infrastructure perspective, understanding, there are large agencies who might have, very robust IT shops, but there are also small agencies who may not have those abilities or capabilities as well. So, understanding the needs of agencies, and then for us, establishing a platform to actually review these insights. This is all about, for us, how do we make the lives of Virginians better? How do we make our agencies more efficient? How do we make operations more efficient? How do we increase automations and reduce manual input? So that's where all these, when we're building these environments up, when we're establishing things like the data trust, it's all for obviously how we ingest the data. I'll talk a little bit about this later, but we start with garbage in, garbage out as a concept, and we try to explain to agencies is, the solutions that you build, the AI solutions, the open data portals that you might want to establish, they're only as good as the data that you put in it. So we are very hard on agencies on, hey, your data strategy is important. How you manage and maintain your data, how you label your data. It's all important because that's the information that, down the line will get viewed, calculated, put into a report, et cetera. So we try to make an emphasis on helping agencies with their data strategy so they can, improve the lives of their constituents, the people working within their agencies and their agency partners.
When
Marcus,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to jump in because Marcus brought up something that we're actually experiencing in Maryland as well, as we're looking at taking this enterprise-wide approach and helping agencies to be able to think about their data in a certain way, come into a trust type environment. What we have found is that we've been able to use data modeling to even share and explain what quality data looks like. And by doing that, we've now started to develop services and tools that can help actually assess the fit for purpose for data. Because we're starting to create this shared language and shared understanding of what good data looks like, we're able to then create the services and the processes and the environments that allow for actually assessing and evaluating our data for use.
It starts with good data, for sure.
Yeah. Starts with defining what good data is.
And encouraging people to participate, because what you're describing, Marcus, is really gaining cooperation, sort of getting over the culture shift, right, that needs to take place about interoperable data, making sure it's shareable and used in a way that's beneficial for, your purposes. So it's all fascinating stuff. Thank you both. And Andrew, I want to go to you also to talk about, you're the industry expert here. What about the tools and strategies that are available for states to integrate data from different sources? I think if I've heard anything about data, that seems to be the one sticking point that everyone has a consensus about.
Yeah. And I thank you. I honestly, one of the things that I've found as I talk to all different types of customers, the state governments are actually way ahead of the private sector as far as data management and putting together actual, real, usable initiatives. You started off well, Jane, with a whole, a picture is really what resonates with folks. A lot of the smaller teams, as you're talking, they don't even know what their data looks like, and they don't know how it's connected. So it's hard to make those, those decisions. My actual background is in enterprise management, and when I first started back in data processing, I started working on a solution that was designed to remove the fundamental disconnect between business and technology. We haven't actually been able to solve that in 20 or 30 years now, but we do have better tools to explain it. So I really liked, Artie was talking about evidence-based. I love it. I call that reality. So when we work with those structures, we have to be able to render a complex system simply for all of the stakeholders. They don't want to see foreign keys and everything else is under there, but they want to know how things are connected. And a data model is the ideal way to do that. From a data quality perspective, there are all kinds of solutions that are going to look at the data that's already there. But if you establish a framework, a baseline, all of last names in my domains are all going to be a specific length. That's where you start putting your data quality in place. And then from there, you can take advantage of it. Now, with the data models, they can act as single points, but we can also show how they're connected, how transformations are going, how to move from one structure to another, because we're in an incredibly dynamic environment, and helping everybody understand what we're doing and be on the same page, but we're all looking at it from different perspectives, helps drive those initiatives.
So there's a question from the audience. It's a really good one. What if you're not able to provide good data? What if there's an agency that doesn't have good data to provide?
Well, you can use tools to find it, right? So to get an insight into that. I'm not going to go into too much about what different kinds of models there are, but let's just call it simple, physical, and logical. A physical model is from the actual structure, and you need a robust solution to be able to capture all of that. Now we're just talking about metadata. We're not necessarily concerned with the data itself, but what buckets are these going into? And we control that with the data model for the DBAs, but we can also drive that innovation with the business team and the logical side.
Okay, wonderful. All right. And by the way, audience, thanks so much for asking your questions. Please do. There's a resources tab on your screen. And if you just click there, you'll find a way to ask a question. Also, you'll find backgrounds on all of our esteemed speakers there. So please check that out if you will. I heard somebody that was speaking and I would like to invite them to talk. Artie?
Yeah. So I think just answering the audience question around, good quality data. So I don't think we can be in a perfect situation where we'll have the best quality data available all the time, but knowing where the quality lacks is really important, and calling that out in your analysis is probably the most important thing as a government agency that we can do. And I think that's really big in terms of developing that relationship with the residents and building that transparency and accountability, that we are aware of the limitations with our data, the quality is not where it could be, but this is what we are working with, and we are calling it out, and we are factoring that into our decisions as well.
Yeah, I want to double click that. It's okay to not have good data. It's better to actually know that your data is not good for this purpose. Like there's power in that information, because now you can work towards getting to that good data based on the standard that you set. And Andrew's response kind of triggered in me that we're also moving into this time where there needs to be transparency around what the data is beyond metadata, right? There's almost like we need a nutrition label that says what this data is and isn't about, because it's being used and because it's so democratized, it's being used in so many different ways that we actually probably didn't even think about when we first started collecting that data. So I think there's this interesting conversation or interesting look into how data modeling can help us actually be more transparent about the data itself and being able to communicate about the quality of that data.
Marcus, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, we'll get into this a little bit, I think, later on, but for us, what we try to do is understand where agencies are. And a lot of them, in terms of, their data strategy, it's, they don't know where they are because they don't know what questions to ask. So what we try to do a lot of times is, inform them. We tell them, do you know what a data steward is? Do you know what a data custodian is? Those are some of the roles that are, vital to improving your data strategy. And, that would address things like bad data. Part of bad data, part of the issues with addressing it, it's not just the data itself, it's putting in place the framework, meaning the resources to be able to manage that. I mean, there should be someone in every organization who's responsible for every single data set, that understands how it's used, to understand, the ins and outs of the data, the columns, and things like that. So there should be someone in that data steward role to be able to help to facilitate those things. Who has access to it? Who doesn't? What's the process in place to manage those things? And then, from the metadata perspective, how you're labeling it, all that stuff plays a part. The key is understanding where you are, and then putting in place the incremental steps to improve your data strategy. Everyone's is on different spectrums depending on their maturity level. So you have to sort of, come to terms with where you are and then start building there. Oftentimes it starts with, defining those roles, those key roles, data stewards, data custodians, the folks who are managing your data, and then you sort of build it out from there.
Okay, and Natalie, I want to go back to you and ask about the enterprise approach that you were discussing with your state's data architecture. So you have key performance indicators, obviously, that you're looking for improvement on. How does data modeling help you in that process?
Good question. I think that for us, as we're moving towards our enterprise platform, part of this is also understanding the 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 unified data models or the unified data standards that we want to be able to create and adopt across the state. So think about it. It's great if you have one schema that everybody uses across the state. That's not realistic though, right? Everybody has their own unique Snowflake way of doing it. But if you use data modeling to create a shared language, what you can do is then create a schema that's robust enough for everybody to be able to plug and play into. That's what we're looking at. So what we're looking at is as we're creating and building out this enterprise infrastructure, how do we create the frameworks and the models to be able to work together and integrate and make our data interoperable? It starts with the model. That model then becomes the foundation for creating things like a shared schema, for creating that standard for defining what fit for purpose data looks like. So that's what we're really looking at. So our KPIs going forward have really been centered on what are those things we need to put in place so that we can actually communicate and work together without having to fully integrate everybody into one system.
Takes a fair amount of trust among the people that you're working with and a little bit of culture
Absolutely.
change, which was what
It-
Marcus was discussing too.
Absolutely. I'm using Virginia as my model. I've spoken to Marcus a couple of times.
Arnie, I'll bring you in on this conversation because in San Jose, you're looking to create a single source of data. Sounds familiar. That sounds like what our two speakers are just discussing here. So, how are you setting that process up? And why do you think it'll be beneficial? And what needs to change in your process within the agencies that you interact with in order to make that happen?
So that's a loaded question. So I will start with. So I mentioned our data governance policy previously. So we have we are shaping our data strategy and we've set our objectives through that. And really, data governance policy is how we are planning to implement that. So we're establishing working groups around each focus areas that we want to work around data. So we have identified 5 working groups, starting with data sharing, data standards, data infrastructure, data capacity building, and data analytics. So data analytics has been a no-brainer. Everybody is already building reports and dashboards. So that's already people have been in the flow of it. So we, even before we had the governance policy discussion, the analytics working group was in place. People were meeting regularly to discuss how can we make use of these analytics platforms best? How can we have more of sharing and collaboration around these analytics tools? So that was already in place. That didn't take us any effort. It was just, I think, just driven by so much data being available, so much demand for dashboards coming in that it just fell in place on its own. But then the other ones are really, it goes to the communities of practice that I mentioned as our objective. So really, it requires an organizational change to really bring these working groups together and establish them in a way that everybody is bought into the objective that's behind each of these working groups. So data sharing, as an example, I would say, is really I've worked on a few projects where we come up with working with some partners. It could be county, it could be another vendor. And then we're like, okay, we'll share data. Do you have a template? And we're like, no. We'll find out what others have done and we'll maybe take that and then we reach out to people and then gather that and then we put ours together by collecting all of that. Versus if we could really come together as a group and discuss what are the different scenarios in which we would like. We do share data on a regular basis. Can we have them templatized? And at the same time, when we are establishing this data sharing MOUs and agreements, we also think about, okay, we will be collecting data. What is it that we want to have, some standards, if we want to build those into our data sharing agreements for collection and the use of data at the end of it. So really thinking about data from the conception to the use of it. And building that all into at the outset of it, instead of having it as an afterthought. So that's like just the data sharing. Data standards also touches on a lot of the data collection pieces of it, the metadata, the schema, and all of that falls into it. The data infrastructure is a big portion in itself. Like you can talk about the data warehouse, the data lakes, the ETL frameworks. You could have the anonymization framework, which comes in quite a lot for us because we are working with sensitive data in some scenarios, and we just don't want to feed everything into one common place where people might not be comfortable sharing that information. So can we anonymize that in some way? And then the capacity building is really a big one as well. When I say capacity building, we really mean enabling city staff to make better use of data. So like what Natalie had mentioned, really we are having that kind of a literacy program around data use. So we are what we call is a data upskilling program. We are in the second round of that. So we are bringing analysts from different departments who have access to data, but they are really looking for developing some skills to make use of that data. So as they come into these programs, we train them on different technologies, and then we also help them. We ask them to bring a project to this program as they come in, so that as they learn these technologies, they can also put that into use through that project implementation. And as they go through that project implementation, we guide them, we work with them to really go through all of, like, discuss their challenges and provide them the necessary support they need. And then also have them think about long-term sustainability of the project that they're building to make sure that this is not a one-time work that's just done and gone. So just so many different aspects and so many different ways we're trying to really make sure that we cover all aspects and build something that is more sustainable and has a longer life in that sense.
That's usable over time, right? The idea that planning in advance and then executing more important than ever in the current environment. And speaking of that, Andrew, I wanted to turn to you. So states are putting together their data programs. Data maturity, which we'll talk to Marcus about in just a second, is a factor. But there are programs like advanced analytics and business intelligence through analytics. So if clients really have that as their North Star, what do you recommend if you're in the beginning stages? Are there best practices that people should bear in mind to make that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the topic today is going to be more around data modeling, but data governance is also obviously very important. And the way we approach it is we'll use data models for your static structures and be able to manage them from that level. And then all of that can feed into what we refer to as our data intelligence. And the reason we call it data intelligence and not necessarily data governance, because there are data governance solutions out there. But as we're having this discussion, knowing what the data is and where it is, and you can have it based on a model, so it's based on reality. And then the ultimate component here, when we're talking about disparate systems, is the trust of the information as it gets here. So there are multiple transformations, there are business rules that are applied before it actually gets to those dashboards. So by using the modeler, we're establishing, pretty much the framework on the disk, and then we could take that information, stitch it together to show how the data is flowing, which is a different kind of data model, but also put that in perspective with the data stewards and things like that. As you were talking before, I took some notes here, a nutrition label. I love that. When you're building a data model, everybody's going to expect to see the metadata. But what's really important is putting that metadata in context. Is this relevant to CCPA, right? Or is this relevant to HIPAA and its little cousin PHI, PCI, FERPA, FAFSA? You start throwing everything together, and each state has its own. By having that data model incorporate that information, it's now useful to everyone. And then that information can flow up into data governance, where the information, the tags or labels as they would be, can all be manipulated up there also and run reports. So to summarize, the visualization of what's going on is really, really important from here. So for customers or organizations that are getting started, you can quickly model your data. If you don't even know what's there, you get a picture of what's there and then refine it. Make it simple, make it more complex. You may not be doing anything as far as making changes with the models, which is ideally what you should be doing because the machine or the system do it. But you're going to have an accurate picture, multiple facets of that same information so everybody can do this intelligently.
Okay, that's great advice. Marcus, just following up on what Andrew said, you talked earlier about state agencies all being at different maturity levels. So what resources do you provide as a state, or how do you help agencies that are more, at the beginning stage than those that are more mature in their journey?
So there are a number of ways we do this. First and foremost, what we started doing a couple of years ago was we sent out a maturity assessment survey. It's something that we send out annually to our agency partners. We want to understand their data maturity, and it's a self-assessment. We give them 40 questions, and they will score themselves on each question from 1 to 4. The questions range in the areas of, business processes, data activities, things like people and culture, technology. And so from there, there's an overall score, an average, and it's a self-assessment. So these are where agencies are sort of rating themselves. But based on that score, we are able to provide what we call a prescription, sort of a data maturity prescription that will help them improve that score for the next year, because we do these annually and we keep record of it. So, if last year you scored yourself a 2, hopefully with intervention, with the information that we provided, the prescription, which is basically, here are the steps we think you should take as an agency to help improve your data strategy. If you were a 2, maybe then the following year you're a 2.5 or something. And that's what we want to see. We want to see agencies improve their scores. Also, as we engage with agencies, we're able to understand over time, kind of the challenges they're faced. I talked a little bit about it earlier. We could be working with large agencies, medium-sized agencies, or even small agencies, but it's all about, what is the bandwidth for a particular team. You could be a large agency and you can have the largest IT shop, but strategically, if you don't have the bandwidth or even the necessary skill sets, this is a very specific area. You need data engineers, you need people who can understand, ingestion of data from a variety of different environments. It could be a flat file, it could be, something coming from a database, it could be unstructured. So having the ability to interpret that and finding the skill sets plays a huge role. So, we try to talk to agencies about, okay, what are some of the roles you need to have to be able to improve a strategy? And a lot of that depends on the agency themselves. What's the line of business? What type of data do you need to maintain? Hopefully your data strategy is such that, you're collecting all of the data from all of your major applications in a safe and secure way. The metadata associated with it, you're labeling it properly, and then you have a process in place that, sort of allows people to request access and you can approve or deny it. So, sort of at scale, at a baseline, that's kind of where we want our agencies to be. We want them to have an understanding of all their data sets that comes from all of the applications. We send out an annual maturity assessment. We want to help them improve those scores. We do that, by working with them on an individual basis with, recommendations on, how they improve things on a data governance side and on a technology side, meaning, what type of infrastructure do you need to be working in? What are the sort of the roles that you need to be hiring or training up to be internally so that, you're able to handle some of the work and you're not just, more or less outsourcing a lot of this work. So that's what we're about. We want to try to help agencies, build. It's an incremental thing. You're not going to be great at data in a year. It's going to take years to get to that point. And as long as people have sort of the patience and the understanding to deal with that, you're going to be in a great place.
That's really fascinating what you say, because there might be budgetary constraints, or there probably are budgetary constraints about hiring the kind of personnel you'd like to manage your data strategy, but that may not be available for a year or two. So this brings us to data literacy. And Natalie, I wanted to talk to you about that. So when you say data literacy for the state of Maryland, do you mean educating personnel within the department, or what is your perspective on that?
So it's multifold for us. So we're standing up a literacy program that's really grounded in 3 specific activities. One is creating opportunities for engaging around data. And so those engagements can be lunch and learns. Those engagements can be ask me anythings. Those engagements are all things where you're coming to talk about data, or things you need to do to mature your agency data programs, things like that. So the engagements tend to be very internal to the state focused. I will say that we're going to look at opportunities to strengthen our connections with our local governments. So our cities, our municipalities, and our counties. Right now, we're very state focused, and I'd say we need to do a little bit better to partner and work with our local governments a little bit more. And I'd like to see that happen through our literacy lane. The second area, the second swim lane for us is around educate. So educate is really your traditional courses, right? So that's the trainings that we either mandate or we create optional. And to Marcus's point around doing the assessments to understand the maturity of the agencies, we do similar assessments both for maturity and we're looking to do it for skills across the state. So we've created we worked with a vendor and had a skills assessment created that we can share statewide for people to self-assess their literacy and where they're strongest to weakest. We can then use that assessment to create pathways for learning, because not everybody needs all the skills. So we're looking at, for the educate, we're looking at an evidence-based approach for the way that we want to create education opportunities across the state. So we're engaging, where we're creating conversations and getting people thinking about data and infrastructure and processes. And then we're creating education opportunities for people to both learn what they know, learn what they don't know. And we're also creating cohort style programs under Educate. So we want our agency data officers to also get the latest and greatest. So how we create cohort style learnings so that they are getting the information they need to continue to lead their programs. Finally, our third lane is enablement. We did a listening tour last year where we talked to the agencies about, you did a maturity assessment last year. How do you feel about your maturity this year? So we had this listening tour to say, y'all feel more mature? And if not, what are the services or the ways that we in our organization can support you in getting there? And so with that, we were able to really start to not only look at our services, but one of the things that came up was the need for resources, not people, but tools. Like, I want to hire somebody. Do you have templated JDs? Do you have templated data sharing agreements? Are there quick reads I can do to learn about this thing that you're talking about? So we're creating a resource hub, and that's the third lane. That third lane is really around enablement. What are the things we can do to enable responsible data practices across the state? All 3 of those things were primarily focused internal to state agencies, because that is our mission and our mantra. But I also see those things being accessible to some degree externally. So there's no reason we should hide templated resources we create. There's no reason we should hide engagements that we do. We just have to be thoughtful about it and make sure that as we're doing it, we are actually maturing and supporting the advancement of state agencies.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think it's a little bit of a different interpretation than, Marcus, I don't know if you were referring to the things that you do to help agencies within Virginia as data literacy. Is that your thought process about data literacy, Marcus?
Absolutely.
We have both.
Yeah.
We have both. We do maturity and skills. So literacy is the skills.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would also add, one of the things we do, we offer training to our agency partners and anyone under their organizations via Dataversity. Dataversity is a great tool to help with data literacy. They offer a number of training modules, several of which we offer to some of our agency partners. So if someone's part of the data trust and they have some folks within their organization who wants to get some additional training, we've had folks go so far as to get their DIMBOK certification. So it's something that it's great to get under your tool belt in terms of certifications, but from a training perspective, it will certainly help your organization grow.
So this sounds like a lot of work going on in the data management area. Andrew, as the industry guy, can you tell us, are there automation tools that can help with some of this that can be effective for state and local government organizations?
Can you automate literacy? Can you just make everybody data literate?
I don't know. I can say yes. And I would be pretty confident in that. One of the things that comes out of a data model, or probably the most important artifact that comes out of it, is a data dictionary. That's really your basis. And as I was mentioning before, we can enhance that with additional labels and things like that. But as far as automation goes, yeah, there's quite a few things. At the basis, if you're using a data modeler to make your changes, that's some basic automation. Instead of having to hand code your DDL, I apologize if I geek too hard on you guys, but if you're working to build your code for your databases and you have that as a model, then you make a change to the model and then you implement those changes to the system. So by having a data modeler in the mix, you are automating the process because you're doing everything in best practices. The great thing about most data is that it is put together logically. So we can work from that. Marcus made a point earlier about the different types of data. So how do you get that literacy? What is the purpose of building a data dictionary for a JSON document, right? You can show somebody a JSON doc and say this is a document, but it's even cooler if you can take that and show that as an ER diagram, which is what we can do. JSON is great, but it's hard to understand. So that's literacy too, and in putting those pictures together. So we can automate the collection of this information, put together a framework of a dictionary that just needs to be fleshed out. But more importantly, one of the things that is kind of sitting in the background here is that this is not just a technology issue, right? It involves getting people to understand why all of these components are important. Recently, we added a new feature that actually puts data modeling closer to operations, which, third rail. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is from a data modeling perspective at the ground, the bottom up approach, you need to make sure that those changes that you are expecting have been implemented because there's a whole project that sits behind it. So if you can go out and automatically scan that structure and compare it to the last time, you can ensure that all of the changes have been put in place there, because like I said before, it's the little things that will get you. And then in addition to that, model before you make your moves. We actually have a big initiative coming with that as you're moving from different data structures, or even if you're just going, say, from SQL to Azure or Azure Synapse and things like that. Build your models ahead of time with what you have. So this way you have a path and you can have those discussions. So yeah, automation comes in many different forms. We can even automatically generate reports. So again, to your point, data literacy is only going to be enhanced by showing people accurate and timely information, evidence-based. I love that. I'm going to start putting that into all of my demonstrations. I think that's just absolutely great.
Yeah, evidence-based, exactly. And by the way, measuring the effectiveness of the initiative or the program that you put in place. So Artie, coming back to you, how do you say your data is as a service model that you're implementing? So how do you demonstrate that it's being effective and it's doing or accomplishing the things that it's meant to accomplish?
So I think what one thing that we've been trying to do is tying in all of our data governance efforts into performance management. So we recently went through our performance management modernization. We redefined all of our performance management metrics. And just for everyone's knowledge, so these performance management metrics are the ones that feed into our budget document to really inform where the program's funding needs to go. So as part of that modernization effort, we put together like a schema, a structure, a metadata of what standard metric data would look like, and then how do programs actually connect with that. So that really helps us start from the top and really go down to the program level to be able to make that connection, and also ensure that as we make program changes, the metrics are collected to really be able to inform the budget decision at the end, and have that clear connection, so that we are not really working in silos and have that disconnect. So just to make sure, so I think trying to really bring all of that together at a programmatic level to really work as one team for the city.
Okay. And do you have metrics that you produce for this? I mean, do you share that information with, other team members or your, the city leaders, or how do you proliferate the information?
So there are multiple ways. So what I mentioned about the budget document was really the city service areas. So that is something that goes in our budget document. So that goes to the budget office. It's released in the budget document, that's open to public. So everyone really has access to that. But then at the same time, outside of our city service areas, city has identified 4 focus areas that we are trying to monitor on a regular basis. And we have actually built scorecards for those focus areas, which are published on our website. These are live dynamic dashboards that we update quarterly, sometimes semi-annually, depending on how the data is collected. But it really contains data from programs, not just programs, but also community data. So some of the metrics we've identified are more like outcome metrics, which give us a sense of where the city is headed, but not necessarily about what we are doing, but it kind of helps us shape and what we are doing, what we can do in the future. So, and then it also has data coming from the surveys that we do, the community surveys that we do. So it's like a mixed bag of different ways how we can measure the performance of the city around those focus areas. So that's really big. The focus areas have been really big because we update them quarterly instead of the budget document that only gets updated on a yearly basis.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And this will be partly a lightning round, ladies and gentlemen. So we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to hear from all of you about what the future looks like for data modeling. Natalie, if we could start with you, what are your future plans in Maryland for enhancing data modeling and management?
Oof. That's a
No
big
pressure.
question. Yeah, that's a big question. So for us, what we're really looking at are the things that I've kind of talked about on this call. It really is for us about how do we help to take an enterprise-wide approach to using data, using something like data modeling. It really is at the core for us, is getting that shared language. Acronyms mean different things to different people. I was on a call yesterday for 30 minutes with another data organization in the state, and we kept saying the word sharing, and they were like, but you're not sharing, they're just making a data request. And I'm like, no, the data request is a one-time thing. I need it to be continuous. And we spent about 5 minutes just getting our language together for what it is that we're trying to solve. So I do think that for us, data modeling really becomes foundational for the way that we communicate about data and for the ways that we can help our leadership to make data-driven decisions and think about data as an operational resource. So we're looking at it from an infrastructure standpoint mostly, and then also looking at it from a literacy standpoint are the two big areas. I
Right.
appreciate all of Artie's comments around governance because we've been looking at it for governance, but you've given me some things to think about that we may want to incorporate going forward.
I love it when our experts acknowledge other experts. This is great. Marcus, I want to go to you next. So, looking ahead, what are the most critical action items or next steps or key takeaways for state and local agencies and organizations that are listening today, watching?
It's simple, faster, more automations, be able to make decisions quickly, quicker, everything they need now. So a lot of that, certainly involves the enhancement of our data modeling apparatus. That's kind of the core of what we do, from a data ingestion perspective. But then, as we talked about, machine learning, artificial intelligence, it's exploded. And so as we start to understand the ethical considerations of AI, things like, bias and job displacement and deep fakes and unintended consequences, all of those things play a factor. So we're starting to now understand how AI plays a role. How do we leverage it? But more importantly, what's the secure way to use it? We know that there's so many folks who are just so savvy and they can circumvent any sort of process or system that you put in place. So since we're all more or less still novices around the AI portion of this, it's important to get our hands as a state around what are the ethical considerations, how do we protect people's information, how do we protect any sort of conspiracy theories out there surrounding AI, and ensure that we're leveraging it for improving the lives of our constituents, making things easier, getting rid of a lot of paperwork, things like that. I saw there was a question around our data maturity assessment. I will get that out to you, Jane, so that or whomever, so that that can be shared. Happy to share that with anyone.
That's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Marcus. So, Artie, we only have a couple minutes left. Talk to us about what you think, what the best advice that you can provide other agencies who may be watching and listening today about their data modeling programs.
So I would, on the similar lines, what Marcus said, like really the focus for us is really AI going forward. There's a lot that San Jose has been doing around the GovAI Coalition. So building on to that, I think we really are adopting so many of these AI tools. So we need to make sure that the data is ready for AI consumption. And I hear this a lot these days is like, if you take in garbage, you just move that garbage around all throughout. So I'm referring to data when I talk about garbage. So we don't want to collect garbage. So really, we want to make sure that we maintain a data quality so that as the AI tools adoption increases and we use our own data for these AI tools, we really get some quality use out of it.
Thank you for that. And Andrew, I thank you for keeping it short as well. I know you have a lot more to say. Andrew, you get the final word.
Yeah. So when we're working, we actually are doing a lot of initiatives around AI, but the models are actually the foundation, right? The information that the machine learning tools and everything is going to be coming from these data sources, so we can ensure that the buckets and the boxes are accurate, and then bring the information out so that we can manipulate it.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you for your incredible insights today. I know the audience really enjoyed it. There are so many questions that have come through. We thank you for those. And we want to encourage you to tune in to Fed Insider regularly. There are more great topics like this one that are posted every day at fedinsider.com. So please do check that out. And a special thank you to our speakers. We greatly appreciate your insights today. And now back to our publisher, Claudia Hosky, to wrap things up for us today. Claudia?
Thank you, Jane. And thank you again to our fabulous speakers and to our audience. Thank you for your participation today. Training certificates will be emailed after the webinar ends. And remember to log back in the next day or two if you want a copy of our closed captioning transcript. As Jane mentioned, we have many webinars in the works, so be sure to visit fedinsider.com so you can see what's coming up and register for multiple events at the same time. And while you're there, you can check out our podcast, Feds at the Edge. And with that, this is Fed Insider signing off.